Today we're going to look at solving equations with decimals. Solving equations algebraically with decimals is quite straightforward. The beginner questions are similar to solving equations with whole numbers. Let's take a look at some examples. Solve x plus 0.2 equals 0.8. Our first step is to isolate the variable. In order to do that, we're going to have to minus 0.2 to get x by itself on this side, and whatever we do on this side, we must do on that side. So we're going to minus 0.2 on this side, minus 0.2 on that side, and we're left with x equals 0.6. For our second question, we're going to do some addition. Solve y minus 0.5 equals 1.2. Since this is negative 0.5, we're going to have to add 0.5 to make it 0, and that will isolate the variable on that side. So plus 0.5, and whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side, so plus 0.5 on that side, and we are left with y equals 1.7. Now let's take a look at a division question. Solve 1.2m equals negative 3.6. Now what this is saying is 1.2 times m. So we're going to have to divide this by 1.2 to isolate the variable, which is m. And whatever we do on this side, we're going to have to do on this side. So divide by 1.2, divide by 1.2, and we are left with m equals negative 3. Now you have to remember your negative signs, because negative 3.6 divided by positive 1.2 is negative 3. Now that you understand those questions, let's take a look at more difficult questions. Solve 5.84 minus 2.2y equals 18.6. The number 5.84 has the greatest number of decimal places. To obtain whole number coefficients, multiply each term by 100. So, 5.84 times 100. We're going to times it by 100 because that has the greatest number of decimal places, and that is going to cause the decimal to move over 1 and twice, and that equals 584. And so you can't just do that to that number, you have to do it to the whole equation. So, 100 times 5.84 minus 2.2y equals 18.6 times 100. Okay, so now we are going to get rid of the bracket and multiply everything inside the bracket. So 100 times 5.84 minus 2.2y times 100 equals to 18.6 times 100. Now we're going to do our simple multiplication. So 584 minus 220y equals to 1,860. Okay, now we're going to isolate our variable, which in this case is 220y. So to get that alone by itself, we're going to minus 584 from this side, and then again, whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side. So we're going to minus 584 from this side. This leaves us with negative 220y, and on this side, 1,276. Now, what this is practically saying is negative 220y, 200 times y. So we're going to have to divide it by negative 220. And so on a side note, so it's going to be negative 220y over negative 220. And that just cancels out, and you are left with y. So you know that this is equal to y. And then you're going to have to divide this by negative 220 as well. And so this is a positive, and you're dividing it by a negative, so it's going to be a negative. And the answer is 5.8. So to solve this equation, we're going to use the calculator and keep the decimals. So pretty much you're going to have to isolate the variable, which in this case is 2.2y, and so you're going to minus 5.84 on this side, and then whatever you do on this side, do this side, minus 5.84, and you're left with negative 2.2y equals 12.76. And now you're going to divide this side by negative 2.2. And for a side note again, so negative 2.2y over negative 2.2. This crosses out, and you're left with y. So you know y is going to be on this side, and then you're going to have to divide this by negative 2.2. And for side, and just remember, a positive divided by a negative is always a negative. So you are left with negative 5.8. So to answer this question, solve 5.84 minus 2.2y equals 18.6. You could either do it the first way that I showed you, which is timesing it by 100 and moving the decimal places over twice, or you could just use a calculator and keep the decimals. Whichever way you like and whichever tools you have available to you. For our last question, we're going to solve 1.2y minus 5.6 equals 4.4. So, if we're using a calculator, we can keep the decimals. If we're not, it's easier to make the numbers whole numbers. And you can do this by timesing it by 10 or 100 to move the decimal place over. So in this case, we only need to move the decimal place over once, so we're going to times it by 10. So we're going to times everything by 10. So it's 12y minus 56 equals 44. So you can see I just moved the decimal place over once, so I just times everything by 10. And so because this is negative 56, we're going to have to isolate the variable here, which is 12y. So we're going to add 56 to this side, add 56 to this side, and now you just use simple addition. You're left with 12y on this side. This is left with 100. And now you're going to divide this by 12. So divide by 12, and then divide this by 12, and then, so 12y over 12. So the 12 and the 12 cross out, and you are left with y. And then 100 divided by 12 is 8.3 repeating. So if you are using a calculator, it's pretty simple to solve because you keep the decimals in place. So it's going to be similar to this, except you're keeping the decimals. So let's rewrite it. 1.2y minus 5.6 equals 4.4. So you're going to have to isolate your variable. So add 5.6 on this side. You're going to add 5.6 on this side. You're left with 1.2y equals 10. You're then going to divide this by 1.2, because what this is pretty much saying is 1.2 times y. So, and then you're going to divide this by 1.2 as well. You're left with y here equals 8.3 repeating. So I hope that this tutorial has helped you understand how to solve equations with decimals. Thank you for watching.